ladies and gentlemen, as you begin to file in here, this is an episode of the Rufus Rundown Live. I don't think I've done a solo one for a while. I think the last time I did a solo one some time ago. I mean, I did a couple of the game streams with Suze. I think I did some MLB streams with Suze. I did an NFL one with Brandon Mendes that did very well from Breakfast of Champions. I've done a couple of, I think I did one like solo live episode. Not a crazy amount. I think sometimes I do this when I kind of fall behind. I just want to get something out there. And I don't want to wait till the next day. I don't want to wait on more news and wait on more news. I feel like I get locked into this cycle of continuously waiting on news. So you continue to wait for news, and then I get locked into the cycle of, oh, what if this gets announced, or what if this happens, and then eventually I'm just stuck sitting there, and I have nothing to go out. I've put nothing out. I've covered nothing. So realistically, maybe going live is the better way to do it because it makes me feel more comfortable that I'm not stiffing anybody or stiffing a certain amount of news away. But trying to stay consistent with that one a week. I think I'm right in that ballpark from the last time that I posted something. I had planned to have had, I had Jared Antill on. We're going to put that one on the back burner. We're actually going to end up redoing that one, which I thought was fine, but we're going to work through it once again. Yeah. How many days ago? 11? That sound right? 11? Yeah. So, a little more than a week. Try to stay as active as I can on social media and stuff during the meantime as well too. But figured I get the live out there. I'll post the edited version of this, and once the edited version of this goes, we'll pretty much be good from there. But welcome to the rundown. Cam Rogers to be joining the show. I believe. Oh shit! I was supposed to do it to. Wow, I have totally lost track of my days of the week, and I will be doing an episode with Cam Rogers this week. Wow, I totally forgot today was Wednesday. Screwed that one up. But gonna be bringing him on to be talking about UMD track and field. His journey. Gonna really enjoy doing that. Hopefully by the end of the week I'll be able to get that one out. Wow, can't believe I lost track of the days a week like that. And then the next thing I can segue into too is as well. There were some very kind words shared about me on the Breakfast of Champions podcast from Matt Trahan and Brandon Mendes, and I just wanted to say thank you very much for that. They had Matt and Brandon have been great impacts on my life. They've continued to reach out to me even since graduation. We've been in a lot of touch. Just great role models to be around. And they spoke some kind words. Shout out to Josh Nudes as well for kind words. The kind words of respect that I get, especially considering this and the content that I make, I really appreciate. It means more than any monetary value that it can bring in, because obviously that's not, directly in front of me or a direct goal that I can reach right now, making an incredible amount of money off of this. So obviously, you want to be able to impact people or, continue to grow those relationships with people, share your stuff. People will tune into your stuff. I've actually been, I've been succeeding with a lot of that. It's grabbed people's attention. I've been able to work myself into certain situations or certain conversations with, people and opportunities now because I've been doing this consistently, because I have this ability, to continue to progress it. So the kind words I really, really appreciate. I can't say enough good things about Brandon and Matt. Also, Josh as well. Having grown up with Josh, there's a couple of people that have reached out over time and what I'm doing and the clips that I'm posting. And obviously with this, the same thing is going to happen. I'm going to continue to post more clips, continue to post more content, continue to bring people on, interesting characters, interesting people that, have a side of the story to tell. Like I said, Jake Ashworth, be bringing him on, after their postseason run, which is, you go right into it. Both UMD squads are on a playoff run, both getting, W's last night. So a big shout out to both UMD basketball squads. The girls' game was not close. I'm pretty sure they beat UMass Boston 30 to 40. It's not even really worth trying to find the exact number. It was a big spread. And then the men's, actually, Southern Maine hung around more than I would expect it to, considering the last one I was at. They crushed Southern Maine. But, once it comes around to the LEC tournament, you have that off week. If you're UMass, obviously it's going to change the momentum a little bit. So they played their hearts out. UMD not playing their best game. But Jake Ashworth leading the way in that one, and their way to a semifinal matchup with Plymouth State. So, like I said, both shout out to both UMD squads. Also the track and field squad getting, winning the LEC title. That's where my shout out to Cam comes in, and we'll be able to talk about a lot of that when I bring him on the show finally. But yeah, big things happen around the Dartmouth campus. So the next thing I want to get into, Super Bowl reaction. Like I said, it's a little delayed, a little late, because we did the Super Bowl special with Chris Santos, in which we were both right. Against the spread, we were not right. But in terms of the game itself, we both did pick the correct winner, which was the Rams. Is it better late than never that I get into this? And so Stafford getting his first, McVay getting his first they're 36 years old. That's pretty damn impressive. Matt Stafford, I think he deserves a Super Bowl title at this point. I'd say that Joe Burrow didn't. But, what Stafford's been through in Detroit, he's a tough guy. He's a class act. Definitely think, it was taking swigs of Don Julio out of the bottle on the mic, by the way. So great respect to him there. The 1942, he is a man of character. That wasn't just any run-of-the-mill killer there. That was DJ 42, which, shout out to Stafford on the mic. Very happy man. In the Super Bowl parade, even though some stuff went down that they had to deal with, him and his family had to deal with after with the photographer. But yeah, like I said, Stafford, I thought he gave you a couple turnovers there, which, we figured into our pre-process that he would turn the ball over. Doesn't really come back to bite them. He didn't have to do, he didn't really have to, didn't ask too much from him, but when it came down to that game-winning drive, I mean, he was stellar. Get the ball to Cooper Kupp, who's the best receiver in the game right now. Couldn't really go wrong. Didn't make the mistake when the game was on the line. A couple of those mistakes are big. I thought the underthrow into the end zone was a pretty bad miss, but still, at the end of the day, Stafford's able to get it done, and the Rams were able to pull it out. Cooper Kupp with the best single receiving season ever for any receiver. I mean, in terms of the awards, winning the Triple Crown, winning a Super Bowl MVP. I don't think there's any way you can look at Cooper Kupp and say that he's not the best receiver in this league right now. I mean, everybody's gonna come up with their guy, Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins or whoever it may be. I just can't see how after a season like that, you can say recency bias, but you haven't. Recency bias is a couple weeks for me. When you look over the whole scale of a season, what Cooper Kupp was able to do, I don't think there's any way you can look at that past season and then going into the next one and not rank him as the best guy. Leads in receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and then goes on to win a Super Bowl MVP. We're starting to see more receivers win that Super Bowl MVP award. I mean, I think it's been pretty damn impressive, and I don't think there's anybody. I mean, with that resume that he just put together in that past season, at what point maybe he doesn't pass the eye test, or maybe he's not so incredible at one thing that he does. Maybe he's not the biggest deep threat, the biggest speed threat, or the best. I mean, he's a pretty damn good route runner, can block pretty well. That's one of the biggest things about him being able to be on the field and what they're able to do in their zone run game is he's always been a blocker out of the slot. Wherever they have him, he's an effective player. At times they don't even have to use a tight end because of how good of a blocker he was lined up in the wing position or the slot position, and that was even before this year. So, but all around, maybe he doesn't do one thing so much better in terms of Hopkins' catching ability or Devontae Adams' route running. But when you run the numbers, there is no one better than Cooper Kupp. He's the best receiver going into next season. I think he's the best in the league right now, and I don't think there's any way of arguing it. I think if DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams, if any of the guys that you think are the number one, the big flashy, the big names, I think if they do it, if they put up the numbers, if they had the season that he just had, win the Triple Crown, there's no denying it then. So I don't understand why it's any different with a guy who's done what he did, especially with drawing so much offensive attention. I mean, it's made Odell Beckham so much better, Van Jefferson so much better. It's made so many guys on that LA team so much better because of how much attention that he draws, and he's still, it's in big moments too. He's not getting garbage time touchdowns. I mean, he basically wins the game against the Buccaneers, and he goes out and has the game-winning touchdown in this one as well. And at that point, some of it comes on the defense as well too. How do you let that guy beat you? If there's one guy you don't want to beat you, it's Cooper Kupp. But time and time again, when it came up with those big moments in the clutch, Cooper Kupp was there. So it goes deeper than that. And like I said, I will stand by him being the best receiver going into next season in the NFL. You can pick your fantasy guys. You could judge them based off of that. Who's the better fantasy receiver, flashy, whatever it may be. Whoever's mossing people, go right ahead. Go right ahead. But I'm taking Cooper Kupp next season by far. I think he's the best in the game right now. Aaron Donald, and all that being said about Cooper Kupp, I think I said enough good things about Cooper Kupp. I still think Aaron Donald should have at least won the MVP, or maybe at least co-MVPs. But I thought Aaron Donald, hands down, should have won the MVP for that game, because those two plays, even at the end of the game, he had a pretty good body of work before that with a sack prior to that, a couple of tackles. I mean, obviously he leads the league in double team rates, but also in pass rush win rates, so in just block destruction, all of that. He's the best at it. You can't block him with two people. I mean, he has success against blocks by two people as much as the next best guy has success against a single person. So I think that says about as much as it needs to say. The guy is the most dominant force that I've watched, like, in my age. I mean, obviously I can look up highlights of Lawrence Taylor, but in being a football fan and watching games live and breaking them down, there is not a single more dominant defensive presence than Aaron Donald. Not a single one. I mean, at least to my, I mean, that's just my eye test there. And if he does walk away, he's one of the best defensive players of all time. I don't think he beats out Lawrence Taylor, but I certainly think he gets up in that top 5 conversation. I mean, he's unstoppable, absolutely unstoppable. Love watching film on him. Love watching the highlights of him. But like I said, to have that tackle for loss on 3rd and 1, and then to have the pressure on Burrow that seals the game. Yeah, and that was another one of the big things that coming in. I mean, Jamar Chase, all the credit to him. He put the best cornerback in the game. I'll give it one of those, because I think he's a very overrated player at this point, in consideration of being the best corner in the game. Jamar Chase, the rookie, puts him on his ass. He was on the ground. He was not going to be able to make a play if Burrow was able to load it up deep to Jamar Chase. But Aaron Donald gets there, and that was my big thing, is that as good as these other pass rushers have been getting to him, I thought that, well, I still thought that this secondary would be suspect even with Jalen Ramsey to this Bengals offense, because I thought the Bengals just had better perimeter players on the outside receiver. I think both teams did. They were not going to have to cover as consistently and as for as long. So they would have 1 or 2 seconds less to have to defend against, which obviously plays a big, even in that last play. That was what I thought would be the big thing, is that their pass rush, while they didn't have to get a sack every single time, even though they had 7, would do enough to allow their secondary to play at a good enough level. And Jalen Ramsey lucks out, because we'd be having a totally different conversation for weeks to come now about Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and then Jalen Ramsey would be under a microscope as well too. But he gets bailed out by Aaron Donald. Like I said, that tackle for loss on 3rd and 1 when it's getting into crunch time, and then to get the pressure on the final play of the game, that totally changes the way the game goes. I think should have won him that MVP, considering the body of work in that game, because Cooper Kupp's touchdown means absolutely nothing. Matt Stafford's game-winning drive there means absolutely nothing. None of that means anything if not for Aaron Donald making that play. And of course, if they don't get the Kupp touchdown, Donald never gets a chance to make that play, but he did, and it happened. And those two plays do happen, and that's why I think it should have been Aaron Donald as MVP. It wasn't, but totally content with either of those sides where they were in that game. Like I said, really wasn't rooting for a certain team. I mean, I wanted my pick to be right, but I wouldn't have been like distraught or destructive over the Bengals winning it. I mean, I side with LSU because I'm a Saints fan. I kind of have this emotional attachment to Louisiana for that. Shout out Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow for being from LSU. But that's where I stood on it. I thought it was a really entertaining game. I thought the halftime show, it's one of the best that I've ever seen. If it's not your type of music, if it's not your interest, so be it. I hope you didn't watch. I hope you just tuned it out. I hope don't go, if you don't like it, don't go around complaining about it, because it happened. No one's really gonna address the fact that you didn't like it or it didn't matter. No, I mean, you can go through whatever content's going on there, the ass shaking from other people I've done it in years prior, where no one's really complaining about, because it's just, we live in this sexualized culture. So I really don't want to hear the complaints. There's always going to be people who complain or find something wrong with it. That's just the world we live in. It's not like there's going to be any safe specific group, even a country star. Realistically, they're going to find some way to piss somebody off at some point in some culture, whether it be an age demographic, whether it be a racial demographic, whether it be a cultural demographic. There's somehow, some way, someone's gonna end up pissed off. I'm gonna look at it for what it's worth and for what I like and the music that I like and to listen to. And I like Snoop, I like Dre, I like Eminem. Mary J. Blige, thought she was all right. Features and obviously some of the songs that I listen to from more of that old school. And Kendrick Lamar, I'm a huge fan of. So to be honest, really enjoyed the halftime show and what they were able to do with it. Now, don't read into that any more than it has to, or whatever it may be. Again, I just take it for what it's worth, and what it was worth to me is that I did enjoy. I enjoy their music, enjoy listening to the music, and with 50 Cent as well too. I thought it was done pretty well. I thought the song choices were good. Thought they were done pretty well, and obviously it had to do pretty well. I think it had to do pretty well in the stadium as well too. But like I said, Jamar Chase, I think he's for real. I think the Bengals will be back. They have the third most cap room in the league. So for the other two teams to be just terrible football teams, and then you have the third most cap room in the league with the Bengals. I mean, there's no excuse to not improve that offensive line. You get rid of Eli Apple. You sign some offensive linemen. You have draft capital as well. You draft some offensive linemen, or you do both. Can't really go wrong with both. You find some guys one way or the other. You can move guys from right guard to left guard. You can move positions around. Obviously you got to start thinking about extensions. Like I said, the third most cap room in the league, and they have draft capital. But you have to think about Mixon, Higgins, or Burrow's extension coming up around too. I mean, right now you have Burrow and a rookie. You can build up some bigger name players, but you also got to think about those guys and where they're going to stand with money with their contract expiring in the future. You can't splash out a ton amount knowing you're going to have to give Burrow a pretty big contract. I mean, for now you can build around, but you also got to keep in mind that there's still going to be some space left for those guys if you want to hang on to them. I mean, Mixon coming off his deal, maybe you think differently about it. Maybe you can move Higgins for another guy. You think Chase is that good, but Higgins was pretty damn good this season as well too. So, but you have the quarterback, you have the guy, you have this dude with swagger. He carries himself a certain way, and you have him for a long time. You have Joe Burrow for a long time, and I think as long as you have Joe Burrow, you're always going to be in contention. But here's the thing: you're not always going to have Joe Burrow if he's getting killed every snap by a pass rush, especially when teams can just rush four. A lot of these good quarterbacks are good against the blitz because there's less guys in the secondary. They have good pre-snap reads. They're able to address it beforehand. But if you're just getting to them with 3 or 4 because your offensive line is that bad, and they got beat, one guy was getting beat at least pretty much every play. Burrow, wasn't exactly running for his life like he was in prior weeks, but when it came down to it, especially in the second half, I thought they handled it decently well in the first half. I think it was the Bengals' right guard. I can't come up with his name, and realistically, he's probably not going to be there next season. I think Aaron Donald beat him on pretty much every snap. Every single snap, Donald had a pass rush win. Like I said, he's just that dominant. I mean, I would have liked to see more double teams on Aaron Donald at that point, especially at that point in the game. But that's how the cookie crumbles. And the Bengals are certainly going to have to address their pass protection of Joe Burrow. He's going to be there for a long time as long as he's alive. Andrew Luck, everybody thought he was going to be there for a long time too, and he still put up the numbers. But those injuries and everything came up on him. Obviously, Burrow injured his knee in that game. It wasn't that bad. He doesn't have good movement patterns either, by the way, with how he walks and how he moves. He's susceptible to more knee injuries like that, especially with the straight line training it takes to recover from ACL and big time injuries like that. But his movement patterns do not support longevity and stabilization in his joint. So if he's getting hit, while he's not moving in a sense, he's not a safe mover, he's getting hit, he still has patterns that lead towards catastrophic injury, which is why you're going to have to protect this guy. You're going to have to build up that offensive line to protect him because you have weapons all around. And the defense really, realistically, isn't that bad either. And speaking of defense, that call on Logan Wilson, I don't. So here's the thing: if you're angry, if you're a Bengals fan, I get it. It wasn't the best of calls, and at the time of the game in which those calls came, I understand why you're being angry because you want the referees to be able to control the game, but not take over the game. You don't want a referee to matter more than just making the calls that need to be made. And that one was a little more ticky-tack because there's a linebacker and a wide receiver, and I get it. I get the gripe there, and I understand the call. I even said, why is there a linebacker on Kupp, even though it wasn't a flag, and linebacker on Kupp, it's going to draw more attention realistically than it should. But of course, you have the T. Higgins play where he rips, he absolutely rips through Jalen Ramsey's face mask. They don't call it. Now that's at a different point in the game, so they can kind of recover from that. You can't at that point in the game with the call from Logan Wilson. So that's why it sucks. You can't really compare the two calls, or at least, be like, oh, it's fair that way, or, it's fair. It's an eye for an eye in a sense, because the timing of the game is different. How the call was made is totally different. Like I said, the impact it had in the game is totally different. Of course, that one leads to a touchdown, and the other one obviously leads to a touchdown. So it seems, numbers-wise, it's fair, but it's at a different time of the game. You have every right to be angry. I'm not saying you're right, because at the end of the day, I'm a Saints fan. And I've still never, as much as that call sucks, that the no call, or the no call, I should say the no call sucks, because it wasn't a call. It wasn't called, which is one of the worst I've ever seen. Actually, the worst I've ever seen. If your number one reason as to why you didn't win a football game, you didn't win any game in any sport, at any level, as bad as refereeing can be at any level, especially the high school level and stuff like that. If it comes down to a call as to your excuse, it really becomes an excuse. Yeah, so your excuse as to why you didn't win, then obviously you didn't play well enough. I get the call might hurt, might sting, might suck. But if it comes down to a call as to why you weren't lifting the Lombardi, you didn't play well enough. You didn't play up to a certain capability. It's not like every call was against you. You had plenty of opportunities to win that game, to command that game. You didn't take them. The Rams found a way to do it at the right time and respond to that and take advantage of that. And that's why they walk away Lombardi champions with, hey, maybe a chance of running it back. I mean, I don't know if they can run it back. I mean, can you bring back Aaron Donald? Is he going to – a lot of talk of retirement. Is Odell Beckham – can you get him back on the cheap? Realistically, what is the deal there? Robert Woods recovering from the ACL injury. Those contracts of guys that aren't going to be playing but are still going to be hitting against the cap. Realistically, can they bring those guys back? Can they run it back? It's very difficult to do in the NFL. But they went for the win now. I think they were expecting maybe more than 1 year. They certainly will compete. But if Aaron Donald's not back, I see 0% chance. There is no chance in a repeat if Aaron Donald is going back. Realistically, there's more of a conversation as to whether they can make the playoffs as opposed to win a championship if Aaron Donald is not back. So that's the big piece for me is Aaron Donald. Like I said, he wins against double teams, like most dudes, like the best in the game win against single teams, regular one-on-ones. So realistically, I think if Aaron Donald is not back, that there's 0% chance that the Rams are even gonna, especially win the championship. Like I said, the better conversation to have is if the Rams can make the playoffs without Aaron Donald. I don't care how loaded the offense is, because Woods and Odell have the ACL tears. If they even decide to try and rework something with Odell to bring him back, as good as Kupp is, as good as Stafford can be, as good as their running game can be, Aaron Donald's a huge piece of that team. And I could not, and for the culture and everything there in terms of what he brings as a pass rusher and just a defensive player in general. I mean, he's the best player in the NFL. I think he's been recognized the best player in the NFL for at least the last 2 or 3 years. Considering there's more value in other positions, such as quarterback, maybe more value on offense. What he's able to do is literally, like I said, absolutely insane to be able to win against double teams like he does, to put pressures on the QB like he does, to be as good in the run game as he is. I mean, he just just crushes gap schemes. He's incredible in terms of his hand work, his bull rushing work. He's just, it's a physical force. Like I said, that ring is huge. The ring is huge for his credibility in terms of being one of the greatest defensive players of all time, the Hall of Fame and all that. It is huge. Does he have? And like I said, he has a genuine chance for a second one if he comes back, but obviously that becomes a big question mark. If they bring everybody back, I'll be back. Is pretty much what he said. Going to be hard to do. But again, not a lot of draft capital either if you're not able to bring some of these guys back or find the right value in these players. And you're going to have to write him a pretty big paycheck too, which is going to take away from your ability to bring these guys back. So that's going to be the thing with Aaron Donald too. Aaron Donald says, if you bring everybody back, I'll be back. Well, realistically, this dude's going to ask for a gigantic pay raise. He's going to ask for a big contract that's going to really get up there, especially for a player in his position. And that's also going to handcuff you in terms of the value of the contracts that you can pay out to other guys that are going to be free agents that you want to bring back to run it back with. So it becomes a very difficult situation for the Rams to run it back, and I just don't see it happening at this point. But yeah, that's my my Super Bowl reaction. Better late than never. Probably would have been a deeper dive in a more recent manner, but like I said, better late than never. Wanted to get it out there, and we'll see what holds for I think it's officially the 2022 season, because I have the NBA next. But while I'm on the topic of the NFL, obviously Aaron Rodgers with the cryptic Instagram post, posting a picture where he wasn't there with his teammates, thanking his now ex-girlfriend, thanking everybody. He's been doing a 10-day cleanse. He's been doing some sort of cleanse. I don't know if it's a body, spiritual, maybe it's a both type cleanse. Realistically, when you look at this dude, I think it was Matt Trahan who said it on the Breakfast Champions. Looks like he lives in a van down by the river. Totally agree. And the recreational drug use in that van, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. This dude with the hair, his actions, they were testing him, or not testing him for that matter. They're upset about the vaccine. This guy needs to be seriously tested for some recreational drug use, because he just confuses me more and more. Everybody compares it to Brett Favre and other cryptic things and how people left. I think this guy likes attention, the Jeopardy thing. I mean, he's just on his own wave. Like I said, look at the hair, him, all the stuff that's happened with his family. Really is just on his own wave in his own belief system, and really doesn't give too much of a shit of what people think about him. But I think he does like to be the character, play a little bit of the villain and the attention. All that's good and well, but when it comes down to it, I'd like to see you win more football games when they matter. If you're going to do such a thing, if you're going to act like this and do these things to create this attention and create this buzz, hey, maybe you should win more than one Super Bowl when you're the 1 seed this year and you have home field advantage all the way throughout, and you can only put up 10 points against the 49ers, only good for 1 touchdown when you're supposed to be the greatest quarterback in the league, arguably one of the best ever. If you're going to act like this, I'd like to see a little more on-field production in the games that matter in the playoffs as you progress through it. I mean, Tom Brady's been a little cryptic as of late. One of the theories that I've heard is that, he didn't say goodbye to the Patriots in his retirement from football because he's only retiring from the Buccaneers. He wants to come back. Maybe, so be it with the 49ers, so be it with Miami Dolphins, teams that are looking for quarterbacks. Who knows? Who knows realistically? But like I said, yeah, I just can't. Aaron Rodgers has been a utter weirdo in terms of his reactions, how he acts, just how he's treated people, how he continues to. Hey, he likes Pat McAfee. Pat McAfee likes him. He has the exclusive there. I'm not looking. I mean, I'd love to take the exclusive at Aaron Rodgers, but at the same time, I'm not gonna dance around it here. The guy certainly has a couple of screws loose up there in terms of how he's handled stuff. But he's a hell of a quarterback. I will say that. I will say that he is a hell of a quarterback in this league. But I just can't get behind some of his decision making in especially how these off seasons have been. The cryptic. I'm not gonna sit here and try to break down each post. Everybody's gonna. Oh, is he not there? But I say he's on a cleanse. He's thankful. Maybe he'll be thankful for another opportunity to play with the Packers for a year or two more. Or maybe he'll be thankful to play for another team. Or maybe he'll just be thankful for his time in the NFL and go work on Jeopardy. But at the end of the day, my team, the Saints, can't afford him. Where he'll end up, I'm not sure. People have talked about him being traded to the Buccaneers, like I said, 49ers. I don't think he wants to follow in Tom Brady's shadow, but we'll see. Like I said, it's gonna be a fun NFL offseason with the draft and everything. It officially starts the 2022 season. I think it was yesterday, the day before. The ability to franchise tag, stuff like that. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for the Not For Long league. And we'll see who's not for long and who's ready to lock it in with new places. Realistically, every year I think we talk about the openness and who's going to move where and these new faces on these new teams. And at the end of the day, these moves never really happen. So, strap yourselves in for the Aaron Rodgers offseason that'll most likely end up with him being in Green Bay. Everybody will just be left again, just kind of kicking rocks and kicking up dust. And Aaron, after all the speculation and all these speculation, all these theories, all of these rumors, he'll still be in Green Bay, throwing the rock around there to Devontae Adams. So next up is the NBA at the All-Star break. Apparently the Daytona 500 did better than the NBA All-Star game, which All-Star game's continuing to dull Pro Bowl All-Star game. I wouldn't really read too much into that. The NBA is one of the more popular leagues, I think, in the U.S., in the world, especially considering the China connection. But, NBA at the break, we got some title odds. I got some reactions to trades. And then I guess I can address the MLB lockout because it's news. I could go through the whole Jeff Passan tweet thread. But realistically, I don't want to have to touch it just makes me angry, makes my blood boil. Maybe I'll do a specific TikTok on the MLB lockout, where it stands. I have to do a project for class. It's like 2 or 3 minutes. So maybe I'll address it then as opposed to on here because it just makes me so angry that these millionaires and these billionaires can't figure it out. The minor leagues are trying to get rid of the minor leagues. Owners want a salary cap. Players want to keep making $500 million over 13 years just to suck after the first 3. They're killing the game. They're continuing to kill the game. I don't think there's going to be a season. I don't think we're going to have a Major League Baseball season. I think I don't see us having a season, and I think it's going to see a lot of these players on the market go to different. But then again, you don't know what it's going to look like after the collective bargaining. You don't know if there's going to be salary caps or who's going to be able to dish out these big contracts or what the luxury tax is going to be. All of this stuff. I mean, I can't even understand what it's going to look like. I can't even begin to guess on that and where guys are going to end up or what it's going to look like. I can just tell you this right now that I love the game of baseball, but they continue to murder it. The games are getting longer and longer. Less people are watching as well as it still does. And they're really trying, and as successful as some of these small market teams are, they are continuing to kill them ever so slowly. So I really, really am pissed off with the direction that the MLB is going. I cannot stand this lockout considering, it's a lot of money at stake, but these billionaires continue to talk about how hard it is to run these teams and to be billionaires. Well, at that point, if obviously, I know you own something and there's profitability there, but integrity of the game. When does that matter? When does the game? When do the fans matter? It just comes down. It comes down to the almighty dollar, and the fans are on the outside looking in. No one cares for the fans and cares about if the game dies or not. They're only looking out for their own interest. Well, guess what? The people who are really putting money in your pockets one way or the other and paying your interest and with all the advertising revenue and the marketing revenue are the fans. So at some point, you're going to have to understand what we want in order for everybody involved to make their profits. Because if there are no fans, there is no league, and there is no profit to be made off of any of us. And if you continue to piss us off and kill the game, less of that is going to be available to both the players and the owners because one hand feeds the other there. So we're all connected. And if you continue to piss us off and cut the fans out of the loop and continue to lessen the impact and take knock fans away from the game, push them away from the game of baseball, more and more over time, the game of baseball is going to die, and you're going to have an ABA, American Baseball Association, something else. They need this. The MLB is killing baseball. Love baseball to death. College baseball has been been great so far. I've been able to watch some highlights, watch some games. A lot of the local Division III starting up their season as well. Some going on the spring break trips. Some staying up here and playing a couple of games. But I'll be able to tune into a lot more college baseball because I'm really betting on it. I don't know what the odds are if there to be no season or not, but I really don't think we're going to have a baseball season this year. So that's my thoughts on the MLB lockout. Now I guess I can just roll into the NBA. I was going to talk some soccer, but I don't really want to get too much into the soccer. Weston McKennie and the Champions League. Following the next round of the 16, I think as next week as I get into it, I'll probably do a Monday show, giving my thoughts on who's going to move on after the round. Well, actually, I think the next round of 16, the second leg, it takes some time before it comes around. Anyways, after the round of 16 is when you really get into a good pace for Champions League soccer, where I'll want to address more of it. The McKennie injury sucks, but again, those games leading into the qualifiers aren't going to be that big of a deal until later on in March, which is obviously going to be more of the time to address the possible struggles of the U.S. national team without Weston McKennie. But like I said, NBA talk. We got NBA Finals odds, so I'm going to get the the link open here and just kind of briefly run down through it. And we'll see the futures odds. Now, I think it should be the same as it was this morning. I'm going based off of Caesars. The best odds to win the NBA Finals right now is the Phoenix Suns at plus 450. The Warriors following right after, plus 475. The Nets at plus 550. I believe the Nets were plus 600 this morning, but Ben Simmons set the place in. I think the news of that might have dropped it to 50. Plus 600 for the Bucks, plus 700 for the 76ers. Now Caesars has the Miami Heat at plus 1100. They were plus 1000 this morning. Utah Jazz plus 1600. Boston Celtics plus 2500, along with the Grizzlies at plus 2500. The Bulls were at plus 2500 this morning. They fall back to plus 3,000. Plus 3,000 for the Nuggets, plus 4,000 for the Lakers. Again, the numbers you want to be looking at for the Lakers are more or less, will they make the playoffs? That's more of the question there. You have the Cavaliers at plus 5,000, which have actually been a very, very good team to watch. I think the move for Rondo was a solid one to help out Darius Garland with a Sexton injury. And I also think that the LeVert move is really good too, because Mobley's look good. You still have Kevin Love there. You have you've had Lauri Markkanen, he's been out with injury. Mobley's looked great as a rookie, in the 4 and the 5 position. Like I said, LeVert's a really good scoring option. I mean, you're doing this without Colin Sexton as well as a very good player, but Garland's been fantastic this season. C.D. Osman's been pretty good. So there's a lot of some overperforming there, but also some guys kind of coming into their own for that team. And like I said, I don't see them as a title favorite. I don't see them really in the same conversation as a lot of the teams that are 3,000 or lower. But not the worst odds if you wanted to take a flyer on a team at plus 4,000. Like I said, the Nuggets are probably at some point going to get Jamal Murray back. You get Nikola Jokic, who's been fantastic so far. Those are a couple of those. In the Celtics, the Derek White move. The Bulls are without Lonzo Ball, but still been very good with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine. So they've still been very productive as well with Nikola Vucevic. So there's some real good names there for Chicago. I've been playing pretty well. I think they're set to get Lonzo back at some point, who's having a really good season defensively, shooting the 3-ball very well. Obviously, he moves the ball very well on offense. But you look at them with the Grizzlies, the Celtics. I think the Grizzlies it's just tough coming out of the West. That really determines a lot of your odds, and why the Jazz are a little bit lower there too, as good as Donovan Mitchell is. Again, a lot of it's going to come down to what conference you're coming out of. Like I said, the Suns at plus 450. CP3, what about the injury? He's going to be out for quite a bit of time. Still one of the top teams in the league, even without CP3, but he's the engine. He makes that team go. Everywhere that he's been, all these teams have been wildly successful. Him at the point, he's the point guard, right? He's the point, not the point guard, the point guard. CP3 is wildly one of the best leaders of a team from a position that requires leadership and the ability to move the ball, the ability to make players around him better, make younger players better. So that injury is going to hurt. I don't see them. He makes a difference in a lot of big games, and the big games that they have won, and the big games that they should win. In close, tight games, and teams that they're just a little bit better than, or just as good as, and even against ones where teams are a little better than them and they're in dogfights, it totally changes how they're able to respond and react in those moments without CP3. As good as Devin Booker's been, as good as DeAndre Ayton is, I don't see them being able to hang in there with the top teams in the West for this period of time without CP3. Now, of course, once it comes around to playoff time, CP3 should be set to be back. But what about in the meantime? Now, what's your seeding going to look like? And you're going to be in tough road games. You're going to have to play tougher teams as you go through, instead of being able to get maybe a cupcake game in the first round with a 7 or an 8 seed after just coming out of the play-in games. So that's the real worry there for the Suns. Not good value at plus 450. Now, if it continues to drop because they struggle, but it still looks like they'll make the playoffs, yeah, you might want to take a flyer on a plus 1,200 Suns or a plus 1,000 Suns when it gets comes around that time, because CP3's been hurt and they weren't exactly on a good groove. If they start to struggle and you want to take a flyer based off of value, wouldn't be a terrible pick. But right now, the value at plus 450, nowhere near good enough, especially with the injury to CP3. Like I said, falling the Suns is the Warriors at plus 475. Draymond Green should be set to return from his injury. Jonathan Kuminga's look good. Pools look good. Looking at signing him to an extension. Steph Curry had decent struggles there, but Steph Curry's been Steph Curry when he's healthy. He's the best shooter I've ever seen, best shooter on the planet, best shooter to ever exist. Klay Thompson really hasn't missed a beat either. I'm not entirely sure if he's still playing defense as well as he did prior to it, but obviously his shooting has not missed a step at all. Still knocking down shots very well. They have, one of the big things was they had depth when they won those championships. They have a lot of younger depth now than they did, but and now the guys that they had that were in their primes now are a little bit older, like Curry and Thompson, and Green as well when he returns from injury, who could be up there in the Defensive Player of the Year again. So I really think that the Warriors have to be the favorite coming out of the West. I don't really see a big challenger in the West considering the depth they have, and especially the depth they have with youth and guys that are continue to grow. And you have Curry and Thompson back shooting at an elite level. It's hard for me to see anybody beating them out of the West, and obviously outside of the Bucks in this league. So following them in a team that I don't see being a threat to them is the Nets at plus 600. I don't see it. I think it actually got, like I said, dipped down to plus 550 when I was looking at it. Yeah, and it did. You look at the Simmons-Harden trade. Harden wasn't playing for you. What was legitimately happening with that injury, you don't know. But Simmons wasn't playing for the Sixers either. You get Seth Curry in that deal. You get Drummond in that deal. You get 2 draft picks. What you do with those 2 draft picks, whether you bring another superstar in, realistically, if it doesn't work out this year, I would be ready to move. Just collect my picks from moving a guy like KD or moving a guy like Kyrie. I'm ready to start moving some pieces if it doesn't work this year. Because, your last big 3 only played 16 games together, and it's not looking any better. I don't think anybody not lacks, but doesn't acknowledge the talent. They don't lack on-court talent. That's not the problem. The problem is that their talent is never on the court. They lack the sustainability. They lack the ability to stay healthy. They just can't stay on the court together. So I don't care how good of a player Kevin Durant is. He has bad movement patterns. He's already torn his Achilles, which is a terrible injury. Has bad movement patterns, which is going to lead to more and more injuries and strains and pulls, ACLs, Achilles, catastrophic injuries. Kyrie Irving is off in his own world. He thinks he's he thinks he's a mogul. He thinks he's this character, this almost larger than life being. As good as he's a basketball, he's one of the most talented basketball players I've ever seen. I mean, what he did for Cleveland, those shots that he hit. He's one of the most, his dribbling ability. He's one of the most talented basketball players I've ever seen. But he's doing his thing, only playing the away games. He's injured. Flakes on multiple teams, especially one that was winning championships with LeBron James. Like I said, I don't see it. Injuries, lack of game time. Simmons is going to have to fit in, but how is Simmons supposed to fit in without guys like KD and Kyrie? I mean, I really think that those guys can ISO score, but as well, when you get a guy like Ben Simmons is really going to succeed because of his ability. He's a great ball mover. He's a great defensive player. He can move the ball very well. He has size. He has length. He can defend any position 1 through 5 in the court, and he moves the ball so well. And he'd be able to build up confidence around guys like KD and Kyrie if they were on the court. They're not on the court. They're not healthy. They're never healthy, or they're not vaccinated. And those mandates are on their own and what they mean. Why road players can come in and play unvaccinated in there, but home players that aren't vaccinated can't. Doesn't really make much sense. And I'm sure that'll get changed and they'll get Kyrie back at some point. But for now, it doesn't exist. They went an 11-game losing streak because of the injuries they were facing. Like I said, no one denies the on-court talent, but when you're only playing 16 games together, and I don't see it going. I don't see it changing. I don't see there's some monumental change with Simmons. Like I said, I don't see these guys getting healthy. They have bad movement patterns. Kyrie is a flake. He's on his own. He does his own things. You can't rely on him. You can't rely on Simmons because he doesn't have an outside jump shot. And when he's not confident, he does not play as up to the ability that he has and hasn't developed that perimeter shot yet. And obviously, he's not going to be able to build the confidence with you guys because, again, not going to be playing together. So then the next one, following the Nets, I think the Nets are for sure frauds out of there. I said Warriors. And then the Bucks here at plus 600. I think it's great value. I think Giannis is the best player in the world. I think he's supported well by Drew. I think he's supported well by Chris Middleton. I thought the Ibaka trade was good. I think they're in a real good place, and I think they have a shot to go after it and win it again. I think Giannis developing even more of a perimeter shot and being able to take guys with a jump shot off the dribble has been huge for his game. But he's a Greek freak for a reason. I think he's the best player in the world. Whether that means he's the MVP or not, I don't know. You know how the MVP is with Embiid, Jokic. Those guys more or less being in the MVP conversation. But I still think Giannis is the best player in the world. I think he has been since that title, even over Curry. And I see them as the favorites out of the East. Outside of I think the Heat. I think the Heat would compete with them if they can beat the Heat for sure. I think have a legitimate bid to go 6 or 7 games with the Warriors in the finals and maybe even win the damn thing. But following the Bucks is the 76ers at plus 650. I think Joel Embiid, even though I'm a Celtics fan, I love watching Joel Embiid play. I think he's my favorite player in the NBA at this point outside of maybe Giannis. I love watching Joel Embiid play. Plus 650, like I said, they have a killer pick and roll now with Harden when he's healthy. Whether he's healthy by choice or whether he's actually getting healthy, conversation for another day for Nets fans to deal with. I don't think there's a better pick and roll combination than those two. And I think they have far better chances than Nets. And I think a lot of people will, like I said, with Seth Curry and the draft picks, I think, on the surface, you look at it, the Nets win that trade, right? But then realistically, if the Nets, don't get those guys healthy and they crash and burn again in the playoffs this year because guys aren't healthy or guys are getting hurt or they didn't play well together, they don't mesh well together, and the 76ers go to a conference finals or even go to a finals with Harden and Embiid, realistically, even over time, it might look different with the draft picks and Seth Curry. Or maybe Simmons develops. Who really wins that trade if there's more direct success in the next season or two? Because it's not really, you're not sure of what's going to be sustainable over time with, KD and Kyrie. I think realistically, when you look at it that way, I think the 76ers are going to be the winners of that trade. Like I said, the killer pick, it's going to be a pick and roll that is just unreal. It's just between Harden and Embiid. Embiid's never really had that guy that can also just take it there, can isolate, can score, consistently knock down, at least from deep mid-range to outside. Outside of Seth Curry, who's just a great off-ball shooter, but someone who can isolate and then is going to open up Embiid's game even more with rotations, pick and pops, pick and rolls, like I said. I think it opens up their entire playbook to them, and it really allows some different play sets for Doc Rivers and the 76ers. So plus 650, not bad there. I think it's a little bit much in comparison to the plus 1,000, which is now plus 1,100 that the Heat have, considering the Heat, I think, are the best team in the East at this moment. You got Ban, you got Jimmy, you got Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero. Oladipo's going to return at some point. Simple as that. Best team in the East right now. And the Heat, obviously having been to the finals, I think anybody would have been thrown into the meat grinder there, even if the Celtics had beat them. But I think this is a different team. I think Jimmy Butler's playing great basketball. I think Lowry's playing great basketball. Duncan Robinson is a fantastic shooter. And, of course, Tyler Hero's look pretty good as a six-man, too. So, you got guys like P.J. Tucker on the roster as well. Listen, the Heat, I think, are the biggest threat to the Bucks in the East. And plus 1,000's, I'd say pretty good value. It's better than the plus 650 that the 76ers have in terms of betting odds. Following up those guys, like I said, is the Jazz plus 1,600. Donovan Mitchell's a stud, but I just don't think it's enough in that Western Conference to really do anything. As good as Donovan Mitchell is, as good as a defender Gobert is, I just don't think that they have enough firepower to get it done in that Western Conference. Now, the Grizzlies at plus 2,500 is a little different. I think, realistically, they have a little more firepower than the Jazz do, but they are very, very young. Love watching John Morant play, even though his movement patterns are continuing to falter, and he's going to find himself in big, big trouble with a catastrophic injury in the near future. The Celtics, Grizzlies, Bulls were at plus 2,500. Like I said, I think the Bulls got moved to plus 3 because I still think Patrick Williams is still struggling to get back from injury as well. But I don't. It's hard to dig deep into them. We'll see how Derek White is. I'll talk about that trade a little bit more to close this one out. I think we're about to hit an hour. I think an hour is pretty much good for this. Like I said, I think the flow is a little different on the live as well, too, and how I open it. But like I said, wanted to give the live a bit. Of course, I'll get a little bit better at it. Like I said, some guests, too. Maybe one live a week. The reality with the live is that I'd like to do more interactive stuff with the live as opposed to just doing the show. I'd like to put together a live show that drives reaction. I can read comments. People can comment in the chat room. Can talk to me. Not watch the replay. When you do something that's going to be replayed or be good for whenever, it works. It works and flows a little differently. At least for me, it does. But I'd like to be able to do stuff that's a little more interactive. What do I think's better? What do I think's going to happen? More or less questions from there, other than me just setting up my own show. But that'll come with due time. Obviously, the more consistently that I do this, maybe I'll have to do some questions throughout the week, like have people ask me questions and then I answer them on here and go through it more or less in that way, so that it's it's more drive for them to watch the live show. But those are plans. Those are plans that I will hatch as we go. I said Celtics. We'll go trade deadline now. Acquired some big man depth for Tice. Get the move for Derek White. The first round pick I think was a little bit much. But I still really want Derek White to be good. I think Derek White's a pretty solid player. He's looked pretty good so far. Tice is good big man depth considering Rob Will's been out. The Time Lord's been, of course, injury bug strikes him quite often. Like I said, the first round pick was tough, but they moved their expiring contract in Schroeder. They moved some of their expiring contracts on. They leave a lot of open roster spaces, and I think they leave themselves some flexibility for a big offseason move of a true third superstar. But we'll see, see what the future holds for that. Of course, the Pelicans make the move for CJ McCollum as well, too. Zion hadn't actually reached out to him until I believe it was yesterday. And JJ Redick, crushed him pretty well for it, and well deserved. But I saw a take from Colin Cowherd saying it's a pretty savvy move. He wants to get out of that market. He wants to get into a bigger market. So he's eating himself out of there. The surgeries. Again, he's just a terrible mover at that size. Creates such power and such force, but if it's not in the correct movement patterns, if he's not getting the GOAT, he's not getting the GLS, which is down there. He should stay in New Orleans to get help with his movement patterns. But I guess it's not going to matter. He just wants to get out of there. Get into a different market. He's going to continue to struggle with these injuries. And Ja will eventually too with his explosiveness, but his movement patterns not being good in the training that they're doing, not really helping them become better moving athletes. Like Zion, you're going to continue to struggle with this at his size and the power that he generates, but he just doesn't move well. These injuries are going to continue. He's never really, I don't think, ever going to really be able to find a stride because of his health. So if I'm New Orleans, I move him as soon as possible. I get as much as I can for him as soon as possible. Keep McCollum there, sure. I think McCollum's a solid scoring option. He's not a true facilitator. He's not an elite shooter, but he's a pretty good scorer. Damian Lillard's got to be losing his mind in the sense out there in Portland. He's got to be thinking about moving on. They got to be thinking about totally blowing it up in Portland now that McCollum's already gone. I'm sure that Lillard's not going to be too keen to stay, but we'll see. He's a pretty loyal dude. He wants to be loyal, but realistically, if there's a time to go and blow it up and it'd be a mutual thing as opposed to Dame asking, I think the time would be now. Because at this point, he's already starting to get over the hill. He needs to find himself a home where he's, the 1B or the 2 and get some rings and be part of some true, solid teams in a bigger market that can draw. The other, obviously, the Harden for Simmons blockbuster. I think it's a win for both teams, realistically. I think it'll lean more towards the 76ers when it's all said and done with the overall team success. But, I think it's a win for both teams. The first-round pick's going to sting a little bit, but the 76ers want to win now. So do the Nets. They might be able to move that for some value. But then again, if they're a good team, how much value can you really find in first-round picks? You have, like I said, 76ers want to win now. They have an elite pick-and-roll option. You have two guys that can play very well off the ball. Ben Simmons can move the ball too. Ben Simmons is a fantastic defender, can defend any position 1 through 5. If you can work him into a good mental space to buy into the team mentality that you want, I think Ben Simmons will be, could grow into a really good player when he has the supporting cast because he hasn't developed that perimeter shot. But if those guys aren't in the court with him, it's no good anyways. And consistently enough, I don't think Kyrie, depending on what they do with mask mandates and the mandates change, or Kevin Durant being, an injury-prone player with bad movement patterns. We'll see what the future holds there, but I think when it's all said and done, the 76ers will be the winners of that trade. The Porzingis for Dinwiddie and Bertans, bad contract for a bad contract. They really need to figure it out. They really need to find a way to build a team around Luka Doncic because he's a genuine generational talent that I think that they have to build on, and they have to keep happy. He's already been kind of pissed off with what they did in the front office, what the team has been doing. That dude is out of this world in terms of the talent, the ability that he showcases night in and night out in this league. They need to find a way to build a team around him and get him help like they did in with Dirk Nowitzki. The next one being the Buddy Hield, Tyrese Halliburton for Sabonis. Head scratcher. I think it's a win for the Pacers. I think Sabonis is a solid player, and he might be able to work in a pick and roll with De'Aaron Fox. But Tyrese Halliburton was so committed to the Kings, was so committed to helping them build and grow with him being there and having two dominant guards for the future in De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. It's like I said, it's a head scratcher considering his commitment, because how often are you really going to find anybody that's committed to being in Sacramento, being in that market? Halliburton wanted to change that and change the culture. They rob him of that, and he's already looking pretty good in Indiana. And there's way more winning culture in Indiana that they can build around with him being there and moving on a big contract in Sabonis. So I think it's an absolute win for the Pacers. It's a loss for Sacramento. It's going to sting for the front office considering the culture, considering the locker room, how they respond to it. Because Buddy Hield's a really good shooter too. But Halliburton obviously seemed like he was pretty good for the culture, the locker room there. So we'll obviously over time we'll see what effects we have with that. The Cavs, the final one I'll talk about, getting Karis LeVert, and previously Rondo. I think Rondo is worth noting, like I said, to help Darius Garland. LeVert's a solid scoring option. The veteran presence in Rondo helped Garland plus 5,000 odds now, with absolutely nothing to lose with a young team. The future is bright. Please don't make the move for LeBron and trade away your entire young core for a guy that's flaked on you already twice. Please do not do that. Cleveland, don't do that to yourselves. You have put yourself in a very good position to build this thing back up the right way. But that's really it. I mean, you see what the NBA is doing forward. What it comes down to is who gets healthy. There's a ton of talented teams, and there's some young teams looking to catch breaks. The breaks is going to be the health. I mean, if the Nets don't get healthy, if the Warriors can't stay healthy over time, Giannis has had some injuries down the way. That's what it's going to come down to. The superstars are going to be superstars. They're going to end up in the dance. It should be the Bucks and the Warriors. But if the Nets get healthy, obviously they compete. You don't see stuff like that happening because history tends to repeat itself. But if there is a break in the action and they can get hot and get healthy at the right time, there's some superstar-driven teams. Like if Harden stays healthy with Embiid and they really, really click and get on a hot run, and say Jimmy Butler maybe falls under. Again, it really comes down to health. A lot more of the talented teams have to stay healthy. That's their big thing. And a lot more of the younger teams have to hope that they can't do that to compete with them. I said Warriors, Bucks, Heat, and 76ers. And then the Nuggets. They have Jokic. They're going to be getting Jamal Murray back at some point. And the Nuggets should be looking to get back into the mix at some point too, where they have enough time to really get Jamal Murray going. It's a decent question to be asked of them too. But we shall see what the future of the NBA season holds. Winter Olympics, I guess it's worth addressing the Winter Olympics, or addressing the fact that I can't address the Winter Olympics because the only thing that I've seen on TV is curling. Has anybody else seen anything except curling on the Winter Olympics? I think maybe some of the biathlon stuff. I watch way more of the Summer Olympics, but normally I'm able to watch some ice skating. I guess some ice skating. Just normally I'm able to watch more. I feel like there's more of a broadcast Winter Olympics or different events. Really haven't seen a lot of events. The event I've seen the most of is curling. And nothing against curling. There's only so much of it that you can watch consistently. Realistically, when it comes down to the Winter Olympics, if you're broadcasting events, I should not be learning how curling works. I mean, even as an announcer or broadcast, I really shouldn't. That should not be the main event that I am learning. I'm not sought out to watch curling. It's just on. Whatever's on. You know, I'm trying to find more other interesting events, but I'm stuck with curling. Like I said, not like a tremendous amount of hate to curling. It's just not something that I'm trying to watch every single time I turn on the Winter Olympics, which is pretty much what's been happening. So it's been, I'm pretty sure the viewership's been down big for the Winter Olympics too. The Winter Olympics have not been held in a good light this turnaround. I guess the other thing worth noting in terms of where places are being held, pretty sure UEFA is thinking of taking the Champions League final out of Russia. So that's another thing worth noting in terms of the overseas note, because of everything that's happening with Ukraine. It'd be hard to play a Champions League final in Russia when there's a possibility of being at war. I guess that's the one thing that I'll address the Champions League before we get into the more of my previews into the next amount of games. I think come towards the end of March. Pretty sure there's a month in between the two legs, and the McKennie injury will be worth addressing before they have 3 more games in the World Cup qualifying, and a huge one in Mexico, which I'm pretty sure the U.S. National team hasn't won in Mexico since Landon Donovan was there with blonde hair, absolutely pissing off all the Mexican fans. So we shall wait and see what the future holds for some of those events. Got my little MLB rant out of the way. My thoughts on the NBA, my thoughts on Aaron Donald and the Super Bowl. Finally, some of my Super Bowl thoughts. Like I said, Cam Rogers is going to be getting him on the show. Totally lost track of my days of the week. I was going to record tonight. Hopefully I can record sometime this week and get that out to you guys. I'm really excited for that one. And then in the future, some more, more athletes, just more athletes, more local guys, guys that, successful guys and guys that I know. Do I have a little bit of a bias to some of my UMD people? Yeah, but they're successful right now and I'm friends with them. So if I have the ability to bring them on and the ability to shout them out and talk about them, my platform, I'm going to do it. As I would with any of my other friends anywhere. But it just so happens that right now that's where the success is coming from, and that's what my friends are doing, and that's who's in season, and that's who I'm going to continue to shout out. Like I said, I gave kind words to the people who have given me kind words, and that's just how things are going to go. But I really think that's all I got for you guys today on the Roofers Rundown. Thanks for joining me on the live. I'm excited to look back and see what the viewers are like. Hopefully we can get the chat going more. In the future, I'm going to try and craft up some ideas and plans to drive more interaction. Maybe a different streaming source. Maybe YouTube is the better place to stream. I'm gonna play around with things. See where I can get the most views, the most interaction. Maybe Facebook is the place that I'm gonna do it. I know some guys do Facebook, some guys do YouTube. Realistically, if I could do all 3, that'd be great. It'd be hard to keep track of the chats, but I'd see what I can make happen. I don't want to have to pay into it in terms of what service I'm using to stream to those platforms. But like I said, we're gonna have to wait and see. I'm gonna have to play around. None of this is going to be an overnight thing, but I'm committed to figuring out to put together the best community, the best environment that I can for myself and for the viewership. So I thank you guys for joining me today on the Rufus Rundown Live, and then of course I'll have the replay of this will be up on Twitch, and then obviously I have the recorded option too that I'll be rendering up and posting for tomorrow morning as well. But thanks again, guys, for joining me. It's your boy Rufus signing off.